And what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Designated Players and MLS podcast. Today, we've got lots of movement between coaches, players, and the works, and we've got a very special guest to cover one team specifically. Moussa from Mo Football TV. How you doing, man? Thank you so much for being
here. Good. It's a beautiful day, match day, so definitely
right.
happy about that, and definitely appreciate you inviting me.
Yeah, really happy we were able to make it work because I know it's a big match day for you guys trying to get back into playoff spots. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, but lots of movement going with St. Louis. Bradley Carnell, the head coach, is out. Marcel Hartel is in on a DP contract. We are going to talk about what that means to the team right now, how they can get on a run to making the playoffs, and the works behind that. And then after, we're going to talk about Fidel Barajas and his move to Liga MX, as well as Julian Carranza and the end of his era in Philadelphia. I'm Andrew. That's Connor. Again, we're joined by Moussa. And as we always do, it's time for Scarf of the Week before we dive into any and all of it. And with our guests, we always like to have our guests go first. So, Moussa, what are you rocking for us today?
I would say it was the first game that I watched in St. Louis. Okay. Which was a World Cup a pre-game before the World Cup in Brazil. So I have one of my closest friends that gave me a scarf from Bosnia. So this one has the scarf on here, and it has Bosnia on it. It's yellow, so that's why the green screen on there. But yeah, so this one is one of my most prized because it was, I believe, Bosnia versus Cameroon at the St. Louis Dome before the 2014 World Cup in Brazil. So it was one of those fun ways to watch a international game in St. Louis that was more of two countries that typically do not play in the middle of the Midwest.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've got in my closet on the other side of this wall is about 70 scarves, and I've got a whole bunch of different international ones. And I love them too because they're just different, right? You don't get to see them often, so I love it. I'll send it over to Connor. Connor, how you doing? What you rocking for us?
I'm of course bringing out my inaugural St. Louis scarf that I got from my trip over there. Yeah. It was a great experience to be able to go see the stadium and see things starting to kick off before St. Louis even played their first game. So there was already such a good atmosphere outside the stadium. So picked up the scarf, and forever a memory now.
That was a good time.
You're also kind of the face of that opening day, weren't you?
I don't know if I did a face the opening day. I still don't know if those pictures ended up anywhere.
That's funny. Yeah, you got pulled off to the side and asked to pose, didn't you?
Yeah, somebody was taking photographs. I don't know who it was. I checked to see if there was on Twitter or something afterwards, if maybe it was somebody from the team, but never found them. Maybe they exist somewhere on the internet. I have no idea.
Yeah, we'll have to do some FBI level investigation when we're done here.
I'm gonna ask a few people, since I know most of the folks that take pictures. We'll make that. Try to find it for you.
Yeah, I love it. I also rocking a bit of St. Louis. So I've got City on one side with the logo. I think it's just St. Louis on the other. St. Louis City on the other, SC. And a special shout out to Chris from stlouissoccernews.com for sending that over to us. And we mentioned it a couple of times, but an absolutely top guy. He came on and he helped us with our Not So Deep Dive series way back in, that's probably February now. That's crazy how much time it's flown. And Connor had a St. Louis scarf, but I did not. And he was really, really kind and sent us some scarves. So a great addition to what was the scarf wall and what will be the future scarf wall, depending on wherever I end up after this apartment. But again, big shout out, Chris. Thanks so much for that. Repping it proud today. So
he's awesome.
Yeah, top guy, man. It was such a good conversation with him. We haven't met really any bad people when we do stuff like this, but the St. Louis folks have been unbelievable. You guys are just next level. It's so much fun to work with you guys.
I say that about them too, but maybe I'm a little biased about it. But yes, they've been quite awesome. I mean, Chris is probably one of the ones that kind of help bridge the gap with all the content creators with his STL Soccer website. So he's the top guy that brings everybody together, and very humble guy, so he won't brag too much.
So we
That's
got
why
we got to
do
give
the
him the
bragging
credit
for
because
him.
he won't give it to himself, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yes.
good. Well, yeah, love it, love it, love it. So why don't we just jump right into this and get from a St. Louis supporter's point of view the big news, right? After taking the team to the top of the Western Conference in their first ever season, a slow start has led to the dismissal of Bradley Carnell. He's been relieved of the position before the League's Cup break. Moussa, from this point of view that you have watching the team day in, day out, what are your thoughts and reactions to the move?
I was completely surprised when we got the news. It was like, I think probably majority of St. Louis was kind of surprised about it. My expectation, I thought maybe if we were still going down the losing path since we had 9 losing games, I thought maybe towards the end of the season, that's probably was going to most likely happen. But did not expect it this early. But as you starting to kind of look at the stats and seeing the history from starting from the playoffs with the team I won't name beat us, and and then the losing streak and tying so many games, we knew that there was maybe some frictional things that may happen towards the end, but it was very early, and based on the presser that we heard with Lutz and the team, it sounds like they wanted to still keep the hope of playoffs since it's not completely gone. So it's just hearing those kind of helps you kind of think like, yes, maybe a change may be best for the team. But losing Carnell was like, it's one of, we only get one first season. So he's always will be that coach that brought St. Louis to, I guess, one of the best historic season for MLS.
Yeah.
But I think it was a surprise. I think it was those unfortunate firing that probably you had to do based on the result, but not really based on what he brought to the team itself. Because I would think that most players, even based on the presser that we're having, all of the first thing the players were saying was a thank you to the coach first, and have not heard anything really negative about him or anything like that. So I think it was just the part of the business that no one wants to talk about. And the team has some ambitions to continue what they've done before. It's just victim of his own success, I think, and injuries, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, and that's actually where I'll just pick up because that's kind of my big focus here, and then I'll send it over to Connor. Is I was shocked by this. I mean, we spoke about it before. I'm a Red Bull supporter for anybody new here, so I've seen Carnell as an interim over at Red Bull, and everything you mentioned about being a player's coach and people appreciating him and respecting him, spot on. And I think they were also shocked in Red Bull when he was let go and not brought back. So all of that, but you hit on the one that I'm kind of going to focus on here, and that's the injuries, right? So I think we all knew St. Louis probably overperformed a little bit last season, but we all came in, even when we were doing our not so deep dives, and said, yeah, this team is going to be at least top 4. They might not win it again, but they brought back the same group and they've added pieces, like they'll be fine. And then you've got Edward Leuven, who's out for 9 games with injuries and some personal stuff. Klaus is now down for a little bit. Ostrak's been out. Pompeyu's now out. Alm's going to be out long term. Like when we do at the end of our season, we go and look at all the other teams and say, what went wrong for this team? 9 times out of 10, those teams, what the 1A, a lot of their big players got hurt and they couldn't replace them. And that seems like it seems like a tough little knock there for being put in that situation where I think he probably could have gotten out of it if he had the players back. It's one of those things that you got to kind of weigh out. And you mentioned the ambition, and I like the ambition, but is it too ambitious? That's a thought here. Connor, your thoughts on that?
I think it's crazy. I don't get it, man. Like he overachieved so much last season with St. Louis. Like, and I don't mean that to say that they didn't deserve to finish where they did, but a lot of us, myself and Andrew included, had very low expectations for St. Louis coming in, and to be top of the West was an incredible achievement. And I don't even think the team has been like too bad this year. I mean, I'm looking at Well, I'm looking at the standings just in general, and I see a team that has only 7 losses on the year, 10 draws. So a lot of stuff kind of like very close, it seems. Like 7 losses is like playoff form. Like the majority of the teams that have 7 losses are in the playoffs. They're just struggling to find ways to win games with only 4 wins. And their expected goal difference has them sixth in the table versus 12th where they are right now. So it just feels like certain things haven't bounced the right way. So that's why I'm very surprised to see them move on from Carnell so quickly. I feel like he earned a bit more time based on how he did last year, at least, to turn things around. And considering how many teams make the playoffs, it's very easy and capable at this point in the year to be 12th and still get into the playoffs and have a shot. I mean, look at team who shall not be named from last year. They made a late run, got into the playing game, and you just win a couple of games in a row, you get hot, and all of a sudden you're a huge threat in MLS Cup playoffs. So I'm very surprised to see the move come.
Yeah, and I think there was also the part that we saw some of our best players were not performing like they did last year as well. And I think that's probably why we saw Jackson also now going to Columbus. Klaus was not scoring as much before he got injured. So I think that also played in part. And I think there's a lot probably that we don't know about in behind the scenes that maybe added or contributed to it. We saw that there was a few frictions with Sam and and some other players that like Durham that just never played for St. Louis and then went back to I believe Ireland. So it's looks like there's other than like the performance, the injuries, and too many ties. There's maybe additional things that may have stayed within the team that we don't know. But yes, it's one of those things where maybe in MLS is not seen as much when a coach is dismissed this early. But in other places, once you're starting to see those stats going down, coaches typically are fired maybe towards the end of the season, even though they've had a good plan or a run. For me, it's like my Chelsea team, we're doing very bad at the very beginning of the season and things starting to get a little bit better. And then they started to get more players, but then Coutinho is still out at the end of the season. So it's one of those things where it's like, yes, the business of soccer is brutal at times.
Connor, you know anything about that?
Andrew, you pick great guests, Andrew. This feels like it's not the first time we've had another Chelsea fan on the show before.
Hey, why not?
I'm just looking out for you, Connor. That's all I do is look out.
Are you Chelsea fan?
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
Oh, that's why he's so great, Connor. Greatest person on the planet.
It's funny. So I also noted down this disagreement with Adeniran, but that seems like something where you probably could have maybe moved him on and that resolves itself if Carnell is still the guy that you want to be there, because there was I believe there were either offers for him or people were just kind of thinking about inquiring about him.
Yes, they are, and they're still going on now.
Yeah. So
I think it's just that the Klaus injury may have contributed as who else do we have as our best forwards? And he contributed more last year as well. Mm-hmm. So it's like do you really want to move on from all of those goals already? Even though we, last year we transferred almost 25 goals from the players that left last year. So it seems like almost the perfect storm for the sophomore year where you typically want to have your base players perform like they did last year. And that's where people had us rank, between 4 and 6. If those same players have performed as they did. But then you add injuries, and I guess fans also don't like to wait too much because, it's one of those things where it's like, while Carnell is gone now, but a lot of fans are like, oh, maybe that was too early. But there was also some that were calling Carnell out now. So it's like, which one do you want to go with?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and the thing and this will kind of segue into our next little talking point here is this feels very similar to Ziggy Schmidt in Seattle way back in like 2016 when you've got a team that needs some reinforcements. The coach isn't getting the job done with what they've got, but you've got 2 guys sitting on the back burner ready to come in the start of the transfer window in July. And instead of waiting to see them come in, out goes the coach. So it's, you've got all these injuries. You're bringing in replacements to help them, and the coach is leaving before he gets a chance to use them, right? That was Ziggy Schmidt to Brian Schmetzer in Seattle with Nico Ladero, and now it is Bradley Carnell in St. Louis for replacement to be named with somebody like Marcel Hartel on a DP contract. So a designated player, central midfielder from Germany, looking to balance the play. Thoughts on the new additions? How do you think he's going to help the team? Are you excited for him? I mean, my personal, I'm excited to see him play. But thoughts on the inner St. Louis circle there?
So there's a lot of excitement about him. I think I've saw just a few of his game in highlights, and as we all know, highlights are sometimes misleading. But what we've seen most is the moment the move was confirmed, there was a lot of the German media and a lot of fans were very upset of his move to St. Louis because he was a high scoring player and his team was moving to the first the Liga. So it looks like it's one of those players where the fan base did not want him to move so fast. So that kind of put a little bit of the excitement knowing that there's a player that is still regarded as a big midfielder goal scorer coming to St. Louis. He has a lot of connections within some of the players like Clouds. They play together. A lot of the German-based players knowing well. So for me, it's the excitement to see a new face that has the pedigree of the Leuven and Klaus. So I'm a little bit on the wait and see to the point to how well he will adapt to MLS. Because from I'm seeing some of our European players takes a little bit of time, but he leading scorer for German 2 leagues and taking his lead team to the first. Quite exciting. It's just now, hopefully, he will come back within July 15th or so and see how things go. But we need all the help we can.
Yeah. Connor, what about you? What are your thoughts on this move from an outsider's point of view?
I saw stuff about it, I think, at first on Twitter. And as we know, obviously, people have great takes only on Twitter. Only the most intelligent takes on there. But of course, there were some people complaining about it because all they saw with the tag was coming from the second Bundesliga. And then they see designated player, which I can understand to some perspective. Like if you're bringing in a player who's like mid-table second Bundesliga as a designated player, it could be a little bit disappointing. And especially when you see like Inter Miami going and bringing Messi over and everything. But this is a perfect signing for St. Louis, in my opinion. I mean, he fits their identity perfectly with the Bundesliga players coming over. It worked so well for them last year. Someone who contributed off the charts for St. Pauli last year with 29 goal contributions, helping to lead the team to win the second Bundesliga. And it's not the first time he's had to do that either. He did it with our Arminia as well a few years back, winning the second Bundesliga, getting them to the Bundesliga and actually playing a pretty significant amount of minutes in the Bundesliga as well. So he's got experience at the top flight and he's coming off the best year of his career. You're getting a person in form. He should hopefully seamlessly fit in the team. I think it's a perfect signing for them, especially if they have the opportunity to maybe even and I don't know if this has been released yet or not, but if they have the ability to buy him down later on, that's even better.
I'm sure there's probably always those type of talks because I think a lot of those DPs, once they started to stay in the league and then maybe their green cards or all of that kind of add to that to being able to buy them down so we can kind of build up with more players. From what I can tell is that it's a player that's still going up on his skills and happiness. So it's not like he's looking for retirement. So I think that's kind of those things where it's like, hey, I'm going to go play with my friends, which makes it very good for us because if you're excited, it always shows on the field. And he's all smiles. We saw him. He's already training with the team now. He flew to Colorado with them. So it looks like the integration is very easy. Taking a whole bunch of pictures with the players already. So it looks like the character that St. Louis looks at first. If you look at some of the interviews, they always look for the player's character even before the skill levels. So it definitely helps with gets the character. So hey, I'm all for smiling players because that's when they're fun to watch.
Absolutely. Yeah, I did recruitment at Alfred for 2 years, and it was very, very much a big part of what we looked for was person first, because your skills can be great, but if the guys don't like you, you're going to have a tough time here. So
You're going to pass the ball.
Yep. Yeah. And, again, kind of to bring all of your thoughts together, right? Like 28 years old, two different promotions, captain of the last one, this mentality of winning at all costs. It's just what the team needs. We talk about it a lot when we talk about teams that are underperforming and what they kind of need to turn things around, and not to get to our last point here a little too soon. But, the mindset of like, we're just going to get stuck in. We're going to do the dirty work. We're going to do the hard work to get ourselves back where we need to be. Then we can start working on the little things. But having somebody to come in and bring that mentality with them is going to be very, very important. And getting them on a free is a good bit of business too, right? Not paying too much of a transfer fee there. Still in the prime of career, like you mentioned, where he's going to come in and want to play at a high level and perform well. And as you mentioned, 17 goals and 13 assists in the season as a central midfielder. Multiple seasons with double-digit goal contributions. He's going to be able to play provider. Maybe have some of like Najee Bloom behind him, cleaning up the mess. Like Loven playing as that linking player. Like what hurts me here is I don't know where Jose Kajima is going to fit in, because that dude is like my favorite new player in this league, and I don't know where he's going to fit in just yet. And I really hope they find a way to get all four of them on the field, because that dude's been very, very good this year.
Yeah, I'm wondering for him if since we lost Celio, he might be one of those replacement individual to kind of like a double pivot to change. So when you have Leuven is probably wanted to be more creative than to do the defensive work. So that'll be kind of a Kajima and Bloom as the defensive, we'll say defensive midfield for a bit, and then after that you just have Leuven just do his thing in the midfield. So I think, and he pretty much will play anywhere you put him except goalie, which he probably will play goalie if you ask Kajima to do so as well. So I'm not too worried about him. But yes, he's also one of St. Louis' favorite players too. I think he was probably one of those college players that I'm the most surprised from my short time watching, the MLS and the draft. I think he's probably one of those most surprising to me, how he's been able to be the part of the faces of MLS teams so quickly.
Yeah, well, not to go too far down that rabbit hole, but one of the things that I loved about it was, as a fellow soccer nerd myself, he's really big into understanding tactical setups and the way that the game is supposed to be played at all different sorts of level. I think he's in his coaching badges now, and that sort of mental state is really, really interesting to see in somebody coming out of college, because that's not usually what a college player does, right? You have guys who are really great athletes. You have guys who are really technical on the ball. You have guys who are very, very intelligent, but to put everything together and to really buy into the mentality side of it, where tactics come into play, was very, very interesting. So really excited to see how he'll develop over the last couple games here and then into his second year. But over those last couple of games, this team sits 12th in the West. How is this team going to make the playoffs this year? And I'll send it over to you, Moussa, for your thoughts on what they need to do to get into the playoffs.
I guess no pressure to them, but this game is probably one of the most important ones they will have to show what they're capable of at this moment. It's the second time against Colorado, so they beat us 3-0, if I'm correct. So I think this will be definitely a testament to see how well the team is gelling. San Jose it's almost an outlier because they're the very last one, and it was at City Park. So I'm really looking to see how the team handles now. Hey, we just signed one of our City 2 left back, Jaden Reed, to a contract too. So it's like hopefully we have a left back secure now for quite a while. So I'm looking very optimistic, knowing that 3 of our CD2 guys are playing with the team and they have something to prove. Just like you mentioned, the goal-getter and wanted to show some. And there's the new coach, Push, even though he's not really new coach, but he's just interim. I guess we'll just call him the the new interim coach, but he literally knows every players, and some of them are handpicked. So this will be the testament to see if we have the new coach bounce.
Yeah.
And how those kids can show.
Yeah. Big ups Jaden Reed. I don't know what happened, but he didn't pan out over a Red Bull. And it's really good to see him get his feet under him and succeed, because even if he doesn't, he's still got that Red Bull connection. So big ups to him. And actually a buddy of mine back at Alfred played with him as he was growing up. So we have a little personal connection. I have a little personal connection, twice removed or whatever. But it's always good to see friends who are, not really MLS fans who are sending me stuff like, oh, look where my buddy's doing. Look what my buddy's doing. I'm like, great, man. Keep following. Like, that's all we need. I want you to get involved. So that's
how we go to sport.
Yeah, absolutely. Connor, how's this team making the playoffs?
Well, that's the lovely thing about this current MLS playoff system. And I know a lot of people hate it, but this pretty much has kept every team in it outside of San Jose. So, it's St. Louis is not far out from getting into at least a play-in game, let alone just like straight into the playoffs. And it's not impossible to get hot at the right time and make a run and get in. I think in terms of the attack, I like what they have going forward. Obviously, almost every team can improve in some way, shape, or form, but considering the circumstances, I like what they've got going forward. Adding in Hartel, I think if you were to make any other changes, maybe in the defense. I know last season the team finished very well, but that was probably like the one area where you could kind of point to somewhere where they could improve was defensively last season. Not that they were terrible, but obviously hard to improve when you score 62 goals in the year. But it seems like maybe defensively there's a little bit of issues there, considering it looked like, I know Berkey has a low save percentage, but our favorite, we have a favorite goalkeeper stat on this show, PSXG plus minus. It's a statistic where it kind of like singles out the goalie's contribution without the impact or much less of the impact of the players in front of them, kind of like singling out their single performance. And Berkey's still putting up a really strong PSXG this season. So it feels like maybe the defense has been letting them down a bit at times. And I don't think St. Louis has been terrible defensively, but if there's one area to maybe improve, it's in that regard. I'm not exactly sure how they'll go about it, but I think there's plenty of talent still left in this team for them to make a run and get in the playoffs. So I would say probably just go forward with what you have right now and see how Hartel kind of slides into the team and kind of play it from there. But yeah, St. Louis is definitely still in this fight, like no question about it.
Yeah, and I think for the defense, the surprising part for us is that, like we say, Jason Reed playing, Jaden, playing in left back, and then we also have Wetzel, German national too, that also plays center back, and he also got signed to a contract. So there's still that youth on there. I think they were just in City 2 to kind of get them, to playing time, getting used to the new system. And they've performed pretty well for us, the recent games. And Nielsen gets injured, so that's kind of like a revolving door. Parker also, it looks like he's like the wall for there, but still need a little bit more of athletic players. And that's where Reed and Wenzel kind of come into play to kind of cover some of the speed that we lack of. Berkey, we all know that if we didn't have Berkey last season, would have not have happened, and this season probably would have been a lot worse. So, he's pretty much the one that held it for City in general. We're lucky.
Yeah. For me, as outside of what I've already mentioned before with the mentality side of it, they got to start scoring, right? And we've talked about that a little bit, but that's why I really like the Hartel signing, because one, he's done that, but they've also brought in, and we haven't really touched on it much, but Cedric Touchert is also coming in as an attacking player for St. Louis. So you're going to have those sorts of reinforcements, and that's kind of what we were alluding at earlier in the segment, where we're like, yeah, you got two players in the wings, but we talk about Hartel. Touchert's also coming in, and we haven't given him a lot of love there, and that's okay. We kind of covered him a little bit there, and I'm sure we'll get to see a lot of him in the near future. But on 29 goals to this point, it is the joint second worst in the West this year. You don't find success unless you're scoring goals, right? And secondly, to me, you got to find a way to win on the road, right? You don't win. You don't win on the road. You don't make the playoffs. So I went back just a couple of years, of history here, and all you need is 2 away wins, especially in the setup that we have now, and that is the lowest that teams have made it with road wins. But if you win 1 or you win 0, most of the time you're not making that playoff. So you have to start winning on the road. You don't have a lot of home games left, right? So or away games left. Excuse me. You have to find a way to be a bit more resilient on the road. Those are kind of my 3 things: mentality, scoring, and winning on the road. If you can put, and it doesn't have to be like you have to fix it right now, but if you can get on some sort of run by combining those 3 at the very end of the season, you give yourself your best shot. So that'd be real interesting to see how the new caretaker manager can handle that.
Yeah, and I think for him, like I said, he knows a lot of the players. Like Vasilev, Watts, all of these players he's known since their IMG Academy days. He had a lot of hands on picking some of those players. So I think even though he has the interim title on there, a lot of those players he knows because he was also director of coaching. So I think it's just a question of maybe having a different view for the players, and maybe kind of, firing a coach typically will then motivate other players that typically do not get time on the field to kind of for them to show what they have. So hopefully that will be that one push that says, hey, we have a new coach, in quotes, let's see what we can run with. And that may help. So I think maybe that was the hope, to have that new coach push. For me, feels pretty good. Knowing that we're going to Colorado, we've played them already. They played almost the same style of high pressure or Red Bull style. So we'll see who's come off the gate and show it.
Love it. This is going out on Monday, so it'll be after the game, but we're recording it. We're recording at 3:36 p.m. before the game, Eastern time. Why don't you put your prediction out there? How's this game going to go tonight?
Luckily I have not put mine yet, but I'm expecting, I think my score was, 2-1 St. Louis.
All right. I like it. We'll have to see. Our predictions were out. I'll read them off because we've done them already. Let's go and find them really quick. There they are. We've got. Oh, we're gonna sound pretty bad here. I've got a 3-1 Colorado win. Connor's got a 2-0 Colorado win. We think probably playing at the altitude, I think, is probably where our mindset's going, and not anything about St. Louis, right? We're not going to talk bad about them if we do this. But hey, listen, we finished this segment. We're going to move on later to some other stuff. But Moussa, I know you got some stuff to do, so I want to let you take some time here. Thank you so much for being with us and breaking this down with us. We really enjoyed having a proper point of view of some of these takes. We come on here every week and talk news, but it's just our outsider view. So it's really nice to have somebody who's on the inside and really can react to this from a personal point of view. We'd love to give you some time to let them know some projects you're doing, where to find you online, so that we can send some of our fans your way.
So I think on Twitter it is Moussa Seca 17, and my main page is Mo Football TV, where I not only speak for St. Louis City, but also City 2. And also I do cover local soccer from NPSL all the way down to the semi-pro teams. And the biggest project now is that we'll be starting in August, the St. Louis High School Champions League, where we'll be having the best high school teams compete on the Champions League-like tournament. So they will be able to call themselves the best high school soccer team in St. Louis. The boys will be this year. The girls are starting next year. So that'll be a big one. And also I will be in Tampa at the end of the month to watch the Tampa Rowdies versus Battery. And I will be recording there the game, and there will be a coaches panel as well. So there will be some very exciting content coming from Tampa towards the end of the month.
Love it. And we talked about it a little bit before we recorded, but that high school championship, Champions League, excuse me, sounds phenomenal. So,
Yes.
again, want to thank you so much for being here. Everybody go head on over there and take a look at some of the good stuff that he's doing over there. And we will see you in our next segment.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. All right. Well, why don't we then just transition right into another topic after that great interview? Fidel Barajas from RSL to Liga MX, like 4 months after he signed for like 8 times more than they signed him for. Give me your thoughts on the impact to RSL. What is it a good price tag? Should they have held on to him longer? Give me your thoughts on the move.
It's a great price tag for RSL. I don't blame them for pulling the trigger on this. I would 100% do the same thing if I were in their shoes. You collect a ton of money on a player who looks like he has good potential, but like potential is not a certainty. Like, right. We've seen plenty of players who have massive potential, never hit it. Why risk it when you can collect I want to say decent money, but honestly, from MLS standards, it's really good money. I mean, that's money that like teams are getting for like Frankie Amaya or Aiden Morris. So I would 100% collect on that for someone that you had to take in for less than 600 minutes. I think it's great business for them. I don't think it says much about RSL or even MLS from their perspective. Honestly, I think it says more about USL and Charleston. I mean, I think it's another example of a talent coming through USL and succeeding and having an impact and, earning big moves overseas like Josh Widener and Jonathan Gomez. And now you have Barajas, who hasn't necessarily made that jump overseas, but is already commanding a really big fee at just 18 years old. So I think it's a sign of good things for USL. It's a sign of good things for Charleston. When people look back, they'll remember, if Barajas really takes off, Charleston was where he got to start. So I think it's a good deal all around. I think Guadalajara as well are getting a player with a lot of potential. So it was a worthwhile investment probably from their end as well. So good deal across the board, I would say.
Connor, this is an MLS podcast. Don't you know we're trying to kill USL? Stop giving everyone so much credit, man. No, in all seriousness, right? Like, I remember when he signed on, and the only thing we talked about was, oh man, this guy's going to be so good. I can't wait to see how long it takes him to get there. Hopefully, it's very quick. Him, Luna, Arango, like it's going to be great at RSL. Young player of the USL Championship season last year. On big radars of everybody. What a great scoop to get. But I don't think anybody thought that we'd have I think the question was like, what could he become and where could he go next? And I don't think anybody expected to have that answer this soon. Not even at the Leagues Cup break. And he's on his way over to Chivas in an attempt, what I would assume is Liga MX's attempt to get him to be a dual national with Mexico instead of USMNT. But 2 assists in 17 matches, but only 5 starts. He was purchased for $230K, flipped for $4 million. As you mentioned, Charleston did really well developing him, going to turn that into a sell-on fee. I don't know what the actual fee was. I don't think I saw it reported, but I may have missed it. But you're netting about $3 million in 5 months. Like, you can't turn that down. There's no way you turn that down. You reinvest that, especially with the new rules coming in place. You get 2 or 3 players for depths. You put it back into the youth academies. You put it into facilities. Either way, that money having just shown up in less than half a year, no brainer, right? And I do think that it's really smart because he wasn't doing so much for RSL, right? We're going to talk about Carranza after this. That is a huge loss because of how much he contributed. He started 5 games for them, and they sold him for a $3 million profit. He wasn't doing so much. He had just over 500 minutes. Like, it's easily replaceable. Now, you mentioned the potential. The potential might not be easily replaceable, but even that has an asterisk to it, right? Like, the 2 assists that he had, they came in the same game, and that was it. He had all the potential in the world, but like you mentioned, it's not a sure thing. And there are a lot of people out there who have a ton of potential that you can bring in to play in that position. I think there was likely a number that RSL said, if you hit it, we'll have to do it. Like, we can't turn it down. Chivas came in and said, bet, and it all just moved on from there. But, I don't think the impact is going to be as big to RSL as it will be for other players leaving the league. We already talked about Giacomakis leaving and Vasquez last year, and we'll hit on Carranza in a little bit. Of all of those moves, this is the least impactful for the biggest bang for your buck, if you will, right? Didn't really do a ton of work and that's not saying he was bad for them, by the way. I'm not trying to talk bad about it. But it's not like you were losing Chicharanjo, who's got, MVP level stats right now. This is one of those things I don't think you could have turned down for sure.
Oh yeah. No, I don't think it's disrespectful to say that like he didn't have an impact on RSL. I mean, they didn't bring him in to have an instant impact with the team. They brought him in because he had a lot of potential and he would potentially, have that impact within maybe a couple of years. But when you bring him in right away, you're kind of just looking for him to assimilate, get used to the new league and, continue to build on a potential, train with the team a bit. So, I think it was expected that he wasn't going to play this like too much straight out the gate, especially with RSL being like a team competing at the top of the West right now. It's not a situation where you're looking to develop younger players at the moment. Not that you're not looking for that, but you're going to go with your Chicho Aranjos, your Andres Gomez's instead, or your Diego Lunas, people who are a bit more proven in the league when you're challenging at the top. So 100% was the right call. And I think even like regardless of taking that money and putting it into adding more depth into the team only has one designated player right now. Take that 4 million and go get some more designated players for this team and make a run at supporter shield. I mean, you're in the hunt right now. You're falling a little bit far behind FCC with some recent weeks, but go invest in some good designated players and really bolster this team. And I think you could be competing with FCC for the supporter shield and Inter Miami.
Yeah, that's such an interesting point. I didn't even think about it that way because you look at that stuff and you're like, okay, you can convert it into GAM, and GAM is used more for the middle stuff, and just super interesting. I didn't even think about like, yeah, you don't need to convert it into GAM, pocket that stuff, and boom, right in you go. He doesn't count as a homegrown, so MLS is going to get a cut of it anyway to go back to the league. So it's interesting how much he'll actually be able to turn into usable money. But anyways, like regardless, right? Good move. I think all the boxes were checked, and I don't think the impact is super super strong. But what I am curious about is there seems to be this really interesting trend of Liga MX taking a lot of MLS players, both Mexican American dual nationals and not, right? So Barajas is just the latest in the line of MLS players to make a switch, including, as just previously mentioned, Giacomakis, Vasquez, Cade Cowell, Efren Alvarez, Ake Loba, and Nashville legend, Chicharito, Ruben Rubin, and Frank Boley, right? This is all just in the last year. What do you think about this trend? What do you think? Like, is it worrying? Is it good for both leagues, one league? What are your thoughts?
I don't think it's particularly worrying. I mean, they obviously don't have the same salary restrictions that we have, so they can, throw around the money a bit more, entice people to come over and make that jump. But at the same time, these MLS teams are collecting fat paychecks for these. Like these guys are not moving over for chump change. Like Giacomakis was like 10 million, I think, and Vasquez, I think, was about 8 million. Barajas for less than 600 minutes is moving for 4 million. Like they're throwing around good sums of money. So I'm not going to say that it's a loss for MLS. I mean, I know they're losing out on the talent, but you're getting a lot of money back, which you can reinvest. And hopefully, with roster or salary rules potentially getting a bit more favorable to teams in the near future, you can actually invest that money into building the team properly instead of just taking it all and throwing it right at your top 3 players. And that's about it. And having to just kind of like do some more savvy moves to build out the rest of the team. So I think it's good. It's good for the league. I mean, it's obviously good for Liga MX as well. They're getting talented players. We've seen them have, or we've seen a few of them already have like instant impacts. I mean, Vasquez went over and was scoring immediately for Monterrey. And then I believe Cade Cowell too had a really good start over when he jumped over as well. So it seems like it's favorable all the way around. And it's not like we're necessarily losing superstars in the league. I mean, Giacomakis did really well, but he also struggled to get on the field, and Atlanta was kind of in a rebuilding stage, so they moved on from him. Vasquez was really strong, but was coming off a down year compared to the year prior, and they were still able to collect a lot of money on him. Barajas is still a bit unproven at the time. Cade Cowell struggled a lot in recent years in MLS, so they're not taking your Lucho Acostas, they're not taking your Hani Mukhtars, you're cashing in on players that just didn't, or I shouldn't say didn't fit on the team because that would be unfair to Vasquez because he did very well. But cashing in on players, I think, at the right time.
Yeah, so agreed, right? I think all of your points are valid in terms of the benefits, but I'm also just I think it's really interesting, right? Because there's this constant world that MLS keeps putting this narrative out, like us versus them, MLS versus Liga MX, right? And we're just sending some of our either our best players from the league in Vasquez, Giacomakis, those sorts of attackers, even Chicharito when he was healthy. I know it's kind of crazy to say, and that's a little less impactful, right? But those sorts of players were, or our most promising player, we're now looking at the likes of Barajas and Efren Alvarez and I mean Cade Cowell to a lesser extent, but we're sending these players over to that league, and we're still pushing this rivalry between the leagues thing, which I'm all for. By the way, like I love having something. You know, again, I don't like using the European comparison all the time. It's not really the same, but you know, you're always talking about like, oh, Premier League versus Liga, La Liga versus Bundesliga, which is the better one, right? And you know, I like to have that sort of conversation. But if you really wanted to establish dominance over this league, wouldn't you be trying to either send them somewhere else or you know really keep them and reinforce your league to continue to win things like Champions Cup and Leagues Cup, etc. Now, again, as you mentioned, it's all about the paycheck, right? And Liga MX is nothing if not the kings of overpaying for just anybody. So if they're going to throw 4 million at a guy who played 500 minutes, they paid 2 million for Efren Alvarez, 4 million for Cade Cowell. No, you don't turn that down. Not when you need, you know, the capital to keep improving and doing these changes. And likely you're not getting that money from anywhere else, right? And when the clubs are negotiating this or the league are negotiating, whoever's negotiating it, you're looking for the best deal. And as long as the player is cool with going that way, off you go, have a good time, right? So end of the day, I agree. I don't really care too much, but I do find it interesting that it's like, you know, Liga MX, you could probably argue is struggling in youth development comparatively to MLS, and they're making it a pretty distinguished point to be doing their shopping right across the border. I just think it's an interesting trend on a bunch of leagues that have been sitting there like us versus them, and we're just interacting with each other, you know?
I mean, I think if anything, it makes the rivalry even more enticing because now you're going up against players that you know and you have like feelings towards, and versus like, you know, going up against Liga MX teams where you just don't know anybody on the team. And it's just like, all right, well, they've spent a lot of money on this team, but I don't know who any of these guys are. If they've never played for my teams or if they've never played against my team. So I don't have as much of a dog in the fight, but I think it could open the door for strengthening the rivalry even more. I mean, you could definitely ask the question of whether or not you should be strengthening them when we struggle so much as is already in like CONCACAF Champions League and you want to like actually take that seriously and try to win that, then yeah, I think that's a fair question to ask. But I still think that money's too good to turn down for a lot of teams. And
Oh, yeah.
I think it's the right call for them to cash in on it. I don't think it's the wrong kind of money grab in this situation.
No, absolutely. And I'm not you know, playing this out as something that's wrong. I just think it's interesting. I would do it too. But I just like how you're like, oh yeah, because now you got players going between. It makes the rivalry a little bit more absolute scenes when Cade Cowell drops a hat trick in the first 35 minutes against San Jose in Leagues Cup Game 1. I just looked it up. It's Chivas San Jose.
Oh God.
Instant tune in. I can't wait. That'll be elite.
Yes, 100%. Especially with the way San Jose is going this
Oh
year.
my God, I can't wait. Well, let's go from Western Conference to Eastern Conference then and chat the departure of Julian Carranza over to the Netherlands with Feyenoord. Originally an Inter Miami expansion season signing, he was brought into the Union when Miami were trying to get cap compliant after their fiasco, for lack of a better term. He was brought in originally on loan. Then they traded for him for basically a bag of balls. And 37 goals, 15 assists later, he's one of the Union's best ever attacker, third highest goal scorer in Union history behind Sebastian Letou and Paniel
That's
Pazdag.
crazy.
Isn't that mad?
Yeah.
Sebastian Letou and Paniel Pazdag, and then it's Julian Carranza in like 4 seasons. That's pretty neat. Let's talk about impact. How is this move going to impact the Philadelphia Union?
I mean, this is a team that's already struggling as is, and losing Carranza is going to hurt for sure. I think it's a team that I would never bet against them finding the next guy in their youth academy. And I also think it's a team that wouldn't be afraid to go look and spend some money to bring someone in to replace him. But they're certainly going to be hurting in the short term from it. Is this also this is a free transfer? Is that
Yeah,
correct?
yeah, we're gonna chat about that in a second.
Okay, so I won't touch too much on that, but yeah, I mean, from an impact, like from a team perspective, in terms of just like what you get on the field every day, yeah, I mean, it's gonna hurt. The dude is a model of consistency for scoring for them. He's not like Josef Zlatan level explosive striker that's gonna get you 20 to 30 goals a year, but you know you're getting like 12 to 15 goals every season from this guy, which is you absolutely take that up top, especially when you're in a two striker system and he's not the sole guy up top contributing to all the goals and assists. So getting 12 to 15 just goals, by the way, not even goal contributions. I mean, he gets like he's gotten like 20 and 19 goal contributions at a minimum in the last two seasons, just during the regular season. So he has so much impact in that build up and in the attack and in the final third. And it's going to be sorely missed. I think Philly's looking at a really tough situation going forward.
Yeah, listen, and we kind of alluded to it before, right? This hurts a lot more than Barajas move. You know, they, as you were just alluding to, they relied really, really heavily on him for their limited success this year. You know, when Ure either played off of him or opposite him in rotation, they were really good 1-2 pair, right? Usually what would happen is I would pick Carranza in my fantasy team and Ure would get a hat trick. So then I pick Ure the next week and then boom, Carranza gets a hat trick the next week. So they worked really well off of each other, usually at the demise of my fantasy team. But in general, just his play is going to be hard to replace. He was really good in hold up. He was good getting behind the lines. He had good ability on the ball. And that's not just something you can just buy and instantly it clicks because there's the chemistry he had with some of the players around him, the Paz dogs, and even Ure when they played next to each other and McGlynn and all these other players. That takes time to rebuild, right? So it leaves them up top. And again, not just, you know, losing his technical ability, but what it leaves them with, right? It leaves them with Ure, who just got hurt relatively long term, I think 4 to 6 weeks. Ty Barabo, who's kind of coming into form, but just picked up a knock and could be set back a little bit. And then 23-year-old Chris Donovan, who has 2 MLS goals in 700 minutes in like 3 years. They do need to go. I think they need to go out and find somebody with a bit more experience and success, in my opinion. But again, the loss doesn't hurt them just because of what Carranza takes with him, but also what they're left with, right? It's not like it's not like he left and Chicho Arango was sitting on the bench ready to just light the world on fire. So they're in a little bit of a tough spot there as well.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. I would agree that I think they need to go get somebody proven to substitute in because I don't think there's anybody quite ready yet through the pipeline.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You had Chris Donovan was one of the guys you were excited for, and he kind of really hasn't panned out just yet. Still time, but listen here. The big part about this is, according to my research, and again, I could be wrong, but there hasn't been anything discrediting this information. He left on a free, right? He left, and you got nothing out of him. This dude is a best 11 player pretty much every year that Messi isn't in the league, right? He lit the league on fire for 4 years. I'll ask you first. What are your thoughts? Give me your thoughts on that movie.
I mean, yeah, that's obviously a huge missed opportunity for Philly to cash in there, and we know Philly's good at cashing in. They've done it on all their youth player or a lot of their youth players with Brendan Aronson, Mark McKenzie. But yeah, they definitely missed an opportunity here to cash in on someone who's played very, very well for them. And now he's going to walk for free. And they kind of have to make things work to bring somebody else, bring somebody new in. At least, you know, kind of building off of what I was just saying, they should hopefully have some money saved up from these youth sales from Brendan Aronson and Mark McKenzie's sale that you should have money to reinvest and bring in another striker. I do believe I was just checking their roster. I do believe they have a designated player spot open, so you could bring in a designated player striker. So if you've got that money still from the youth player sales, invest it. So they're not in a situation where they're like screwed, like, oh man, they really should have gotten this money because they needed to reinvest it. I think they still have money to reinvest. I mean, hopefully, but yeah, I mean, it's a big missed opportunity because they could have got at least a couple million for him, considering what guys are going for in this upcoming or this current summer transfer window.
Yeah, and transfer market just a tool and never an end all be all. But valued at 6 million, scoring year after year, really lighting it up recently too. It's always about recent stuff. And he had a desire to leave as soon as he did, right? And I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. He had a desire to leave sooner than he did. I remember a couple months back that he was um, asking to be moved on, and the union literally fumbled the bag in getting him offloaded, and now they are going without any money coming in for him. Which, when you come in and you have the year that you did, and you don't have, I don't want to phrase this, you have your own players, your leadership of your team out in the media making comments like, we need to go out and buy players. We need to go out. We can't just rely on the youth, the youth, the youth. And you've got this guy who you probably could have gone for a good couple million, like you mentioned, and you just let him walk for free. That's really tough. Right. And what hurts is, again, the new rules coming into place. That sort of money really could have been useful in reinvestment into the squad. And this squad desperately needed. Philly joint last in the East right now, winless in 8. Well, actually, now that the Red Bulls just tied them, they haven't lost 5 in a row anymore. They are winless in 9. They before the Red Bull game, they conceded 3 goals in 15 minutes to Chicago to lose 4-3 for their 5th loss in a row before the Red Bulls. They need money to reinvest in this squad intelligently, and I feel like they just missed an opportunity. And I think everybody else can agree with that.
Yep.
All right, so do you see them replacing him? Do they roll with what they've got? How do you replace somebody like this? Give me your thoughts.
I think with the current playoff structure you have in place, you gotta go and replace him because everybody outside of probably San Jose still has a shot at getting into the playoffs and really are not far out. So like as bad as Philly's been so far, they are 3 points outside of the playing game. So go get yourself a striker, get him into the team, work things out. Maybe he's the spark that this team needs to get back on pace to where Philly normally is, because it's not like it had this huge turnover in the team and all of a sudden, like, that's what's causing them to play poorly. I mean, they were slow to start last year and they still worked it back and finished in a very respectable 4th place in the Eastern Conference. So it's not impossible for them to turn things around here, but they're not going to be able to do that unless they bring in a replacement for Carranza. If they don't, it's going to be a huge uphill battle for this team to get into the playoffs. As many teams as they get in, I still think it'll be tough for them to get in without a Carranza replacement. Who they bring in, I don't exactly know, but I think they got to go for somebody. You're still in the hunt. Go give the team some hope. Go give the fans some hope, and go for it. Don't just quit on the season because Carranza left.
Yeah, see, I'm kind of not on board there. I don't think that they're actually going to try and replace him at all. Not this offseason. I think they're just going to shift it onto Ure. Well, I think the original plan was they were going to shift it onto Ure, Barabo is number 2, and see what happens next season. Now, with his injury and Barabo kind of being there, kind of not, I think he can still step up to the plate. I mean, he looked good in his first start that he was given this year, and with players around him, he looked all right. This is just a bad year for Philly, right? But as you just mentioned, they're only 4 points out of the playoff spot. They have a Leagues Cup to either find chemistry and regroup, or once they bow out, to rest up for a couple weeks and really work on tactics and how they want to play the game. Now, I have to change this last statement here because I prepped this episode before yesterday's news came out, but I had a note in there that said, man, if something doesn't happen where you either are making big changes up front or a player isn't stepping up, you might see some big changes in the Philly ranks. But it seems like Jim Curtin is safer than a bank safe, as they say. So interesting. I don't think that's the wrong decision, by the way. I guess we can kind of hit on that before we call it a day, but I don't think that's the wrong decision. I think he's earned one bad year, right? This isn't him coming in and doing this for the 3rd year in a row. This isn't him coming in and, the players lost faith in him, whatever. I think it's just they've been dealt a tough hand of cards. They've made some decisions. I think he earns one off season to get it right. Thoughts?
Oh no, yeah, I would 100% agree with that. I mean, look how much of a leash guys like Peter Vermees have had. I mean, he's consistently had bad years, and he's still there, and they won't get rid of him. So yeah, I mean, it would be crazy for them to move on from Curtin this fast. When like you and I were saying, they're like 3 or 4 points out of the playoffs. No reason to do that. That would be insane. As much as I'd like it as an Atlanta fan, because I would 100% want Atlanta to make a run at Curtin if he got let go. But I don't know. There's no logical world where he gets let go. If he does, that's a super dumb move from them, and hopefully another team capitalizes on that quickly. But yeah, absolutely keep him on. There's still plenty of talent in this roster. They'll figure things out eventually. Even New England's starting to figure things out. So
yeah,
just give it some time.
well, and as you mentioned, right, this season isn't over for them. They get hot, they go on a run of 3-4 games, and they slide in, right?
Yeah.
It happens all the time. So definitely not over for Philly yet. But if it does end poorly, it's not the end of the world. I do think Jim Curtin has earned that, and the only reason you don't see him do that is because he's going to the national team as an assistant coach. Because I think that's that was rumors last year, and I think with everything happening, it may be real deal here. So, but all right, thanks so much for everybody.
Oh wait, no, I had one thing left I wanted to mention.
This
for
isn't
this
your
transfer.
show. What are you doing?
And I'm sorry to bring this up again because this could open up a whole new wave of crap again. But this Carranza move is exactly the type of move where, like, the reason why I was upset with the Aiden Morris move. Because Aiden Morris is just as good, if not better, than Carranza. And Carranza's moving to a team that's consistently playing in Europe, pretty consistently playing in the Champions League, top of not a top five league, but pretty much right outside of a top five league. But like Aiden Morris absolutely could have made a similar type move. That was immediately what I thought about when I saw the Carranza move.
You think you
Like
should have gone higher?
like you can't tell me Morris couldn't make a move to a team similar to Feyenoord, like a PSV, an Ajax, a Porto, a Sporting, a Benfica. Like he absolutely has the quality for that.
All right, I'm making sure I don't even reference any of this, and I don't need this nonsense.
Just cut it all.
Yeah.
Just cut
No,
it all.
it'll stay in. But so, here's the thing. That's how you'll know if our Middlesbrough fans are listening to us, because it'll be shared in their Facebook groups, and we'll get it all. I'll have the whole thing going again. All of it.
I'm giving you another 3,000 view clip.
Yeah, that's what I need. I need that with the 100 comments of this guy doesn't know ball.
I'm not.
Honestly,
I don't.
I do like it because it usually is the guy on the left doesn't know what he's talking about. The guy on the right knows what he's talking about. So I'm actually cool with it if it makes me look better.
Listen, it's not necessarily something against Middlesbrough. I just think I mean, you and I talked about it. I'm high on Aiden Morris. I think he's a really quality player, and I just would rather see him move towards a team where he could be competitive in European play, like right off the bat, rather than just having to hope that they get promoted. So that's just kind of where my head's at on that one.
Are you done? You done making?
Yeah. I won't cause you any more trouble.
All right. Well, thanks so much, everybody, for listening. Again, big shout out to Mo Football TV for joining us on the St. Louis part of this episode. Make sure you go check him out on all his socials. He's on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. So make sure you go head over there and give him some love. We appreciate you being here. Make sure you follow us wherever you get your podcast and on social media at Twitter. Go Instagram, because I'm bringing Instagram back this off season. It's happening. And then TikTok and YouTube. We are really pushing forward to get to 500 subs on YouTube. So help us do that and share our stuff. And we will see you next time on the next episode of the Designated Players and MLS podcast. See ya.